Okay, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully I'm not breaking up. Mark, am I okay?
You good?
You're good.
All right. So hi, everyone. I'm Bob Galen, and that's Mark Summers. And please throw questions. We're not going to do an introduction so much. We can, if there's a pause, we can talk about ourselves. Okay, so that's a threat. We'll have a hanging thread out there that we can talk about ourselves. But what we'd really like to do is go through some Q&A, and there's a few in the chat. But if you could fill up the chat with some questions that you have around Agile coaching, everything's in play in that space. You can even hit us with some coaching scenarios or coaching challenges that you're having, and we'll try to address them. So I'll take the first one, Mark. It's addressed to me from Marco. It's about an article I wrote, and it's about focusing on professional coaching too much. And you're right, Marco, that's actually one of the drivers. I've recently published a book too, and one of the reasons for the book, and one of the reasons for partnering with Comparative Agility, and one of the reasons for reaching out to Mark Summers to help, was that I felt like the Scrum Alliance, and not just the Scrum Alliance, but coaching in general, was narrowly focusing on professional coaching as the primary stance. And I don't want anyone to misinterpret. I am not disrespecting or undervaluing professional coaching. That is a valid stance, but I felt like a lot of people were making that the only stance, or that was 80% of the coaching stances out there. People were referring to professional coaching, and it was confusing people. I even think there's a difference between professional coaching and Agile coaching. I actually think Agile coaching is a superset of professional coaching. But a lot of people were looking at professional coaching as being sort of equivalent to Agile coaching. And I just wanted to make that distinction. The other cool thing for me is latching to the Agile coaching growth wheel, which you see behind Mark, and as a well-rounded sort of set of stances. And that's a balancing act I think we were trying to do. Now, I wrote that article maybe a year and a half ago or so. I think another good news aspect is that actually sometimes I rant, sometimes I write and rant a little bit and nothing happens, which is fine. You just throw things into the universe and the universe ignores it. In this particular case, it actually started changing things in the Scrum Alliance. It started changing things, I think, in the community. So for example, the growth wheel, the evolution of the growth wheel, one of the inspirations for that was that article. And so I'm really incredibly, sort of humble and pleased that we're evolving in this direction. So I think things are changing from that article. I think people are starting to take a look at Agile coaching in a different way. More people are looking at it slightly differently. Mark?
Yeah, I'll build on that. So I'll kind of color in the story a bit around the Agile coaching growth wheel that Bob's been talking about. So the wheel has been around for a long time, since about 2018 actually, and it was at a Scrum Alliance Agile coaching retreat where a number of us got together and kind of had a look at the challenge that people who are, Agile coaches, Scrum Masters, people who are in the Agile coaching profession, if you like, they how do I improve? How do I grow? Because sometimes when you're on your own, it can be quite lonely. So how am I doing and how I improve was one of the kind of key things that we were looking at. And then kind of linking this into what Bob was saying is our view of Agile coaching was not just professional coaching. We wanted to create a balanced view of what that was. So the growth wheel is both very broad and very deep. So our view of Agile coaching, and I think the wonderful thing about Agile coaching is it draws from many professions. You've kind of got the professional coach, which we can go and learn lots from that profession, but also the profession of facilitating, the profession of, dare I say, consulting, the profession of teaching, mentoring. These are all professions that we can draw on in our practice of Agile coaching, and we try to bring that all together. And luckily, I mean, I've been probably since about 2016, I've been trying to, let me use the word, encourage the Scrum Alliance to broaden its view of Agile coaching. And then about a year ago, we kind of set off the initiative to create a baseline for Agile coaching competencies. And then rather than metaphorically reinventing the wheel, we decided to use elements of the wheel and evolve it. And actually through writing the book with Bob, actually some of the thinking evolved that, but I'm also working as part of a community team to kind of evolve that baseline of what Agile coaching is.
I'm just checking the, there were some things, and Marco, and if anyone has a follow-up question to the thread here, please just add them to chat and we'll catch up. Regarding CTC, CEC, Marco, if you could come off mute maybe and just explain what are you looking for, you know, the value proposition or what it is or what the journey looks like or all of that? What are you looking for?
Yeah, basically, so my question is, so I basically just started out to work as a Scrum Master. So I was product owner, product manager since years. And then I started looking into, okay, what it would take me to get into becoming a CTC or CEC one day, maybe in 5 or 10 years when I have a lot of experience and so on and so on. And it's quite intimidating, kind of. So what is expected from you from this checklist? So for CEC, you need to be able to coach on PCC level, which requires you to have 500 hours and everything should be paid and so on. And even for CTC, you need ACC level and so on and so on. Even when you don't need the actual credential or certificate, I guess most of the people will then go in this direction and make the certificate to be sure that they will meet the requirements. And that is basically why I ask if maybe they want, I don't know if it makes sense to kind of make the requirement less strict in this regard, but if you want to consider more consulting, maybe even more facilitating and so on, I think it would make sense to maybe lighten it up a bit, or I don't know how to say it properly in English, but to make it less strict so that people are actually able to get to this point to become a CTC and CEC, because I don't know how it was 5-10 years ago, if this how to say, if it was there that much challenging as well to become a CTC CEC, and maybe it just becomes so challenging within the last years, right? And that is something I'm a bit concerned about, because there's so much stuff ahead of me to get there that I'm not really sure how to start and where to start.
I mean, I'll start on that, I think, Bob, if that's all right. Because it has changed, you know, these things do evolve over time, and I think it will continue to evolve. I kind of sensed it was perhaps around 2016, 2017, where there was a huge shift more towards professional coaching. However, what I would say is it was hard before that, but maybe with a different focus. So I think it's meant to be hard in a certain way, so that it is more valuable. Because you have to do a lot of personal development in order to kind of get to that level. I'm hoping, I often guide and mentor people through the CTC and or CEC. Last time I did that was perhaps 12 months ago. Then it still was very much a focus on the professional coaching, but that's how it's today. Me and Bob are going to continue to kind of help them think about evolving that over the time as well. But I think just thinking of maybe, you know, ultimately we want to be as good as we can be as well, and I think kind of if we focus on these different areas and have that balance. By the way, the stance that you will probably get from the Scrum Alliance and the people who review that is that often people who were coming to them looking for the CEC or CTC, they were already good at the other stuff. Yeah, so that's why they focused so much on the coaching. It wasn't that necessarily the other stuff isn't important, it's just that's where a lot of people were kind of falling down. So that's why there's the emphasis been put there. But I actually think we do need more emphasis in other places as well. Bob, your thoughts?
A couple things I just have a correction, Marco, a misinterpretation. It says PCC or ACC and equivalent. It doesn't say that you need to have those. So you need to have similar experience to that, which is a big difference, right? So if you have there's hour requirements and money required. I mean, there's a lot of investment into be an ACC or to be a PCC. It's just talking about the equivalency, and that could be gained by you just in your own learning, I think, right? And then being able to provide that evidence. That Mark alluded to it. It is heavily, again, that was one of my influencers for writing the article, that original article.
Hello, this is Karen Zenergy.
Hi, Karen. I'm good. That article was, I looked on the Scrum Alliance site and I saw this, skew towards that one stance, if you will, one to the professional coaching. I mean, literally, I looked at all the reference materials and there was, I think if I recall, one or two in the consulting stance or in the advising stance. If there was one of those, there was like one or two books referenced there. So if you looked at like the reading materials and the references to gain the skill set, everything, it wasn't just that the certification was skewed in that direction. All of the materials, all of the supporting materials was very heavily skewed that way as well. And so I think it's changing, to Mark's point. It's softening a little bit. I think it's evolving in that way. We'll have to see. Back to, I'd say, get help. I do what Mark said he was doing. Reach out to people. There are firms that provide mentoring and hand-holding and guidance for CTC, CEC. Some of them charge for it, and some people provide it. I provide it pro bono. I have a limited whip of people that I'm trying to guide through the process. What I would say is, don't initially be intimidated. I understand where it can be intimidating, but I'd say tag up with someone, get a mentor and a guide. If you can, you could reach out to me. I don't know if I have the whip, but you could reach out to me and we could try to plot that path for you. It's a little bit more manageable if you have some help, I think, along the path. Either a paid guide or whatnot, but that really helps with the path.
Yeah, I guess just building on that and kind of sharing maybe some of our own stories, and I'll do that a bit first, and kind of what helped me kind of along that path that might help as well. I mean, I became it used to be, what was it? CSC. It was called a CSC before before it became CTC and CEC, and I got that in about 2010. And for me, that was a very rewarding journey to actually go through. To actually both the journey to get to the point where I was ready to apply, but also kind of it often takes a long time when you start going through the application process as well. I think the things that made me really in my career made me really be able to do that was being able to go and work with others in engagements and learn off other people. Not open to you maybe all of the time, but look for those opportunities as you move through your kind of careers. Who do you want to work with? That was the question I asked myself, and I went and worked with people who I would learn and grow and develop from those kind of people. So and also you can kind of, as Bob was alluding to, the kind of mentorship stuff as well.
It is one of the reasons I stay there, and we'll wrap it and land it this way, Marco, to make it worthwhile. My primary driver for me personally is the community of CECs and CTCs. So I just like the community. Mark and I met through the community. We try to give back through the community. So I'm sort of hanging a carrot out there that I think one of the value propositions of it is it's a really good group, and we really care about each other, and we'll try to sort of help each other, guide each other, etc. At least that's what I've found. That's one of the reasons I stay there, or one of the reasons I keep renewing my certification is because of the community around the Scrum Alliance sponsored community. Let's go to another question. Randy said something. I love the book, but it found it was, I'm a direct employee for my company. I'm not a consultant. Your book was mainly focused on coaches that are in a consulting role. That sort of makes me sad a little bit, Randy. I don't know if I was targeting just consultants as in the book. I don't think, coming back to the growth wheel, I think the growth wheel is a generic framework for anyone who's doing agile coaching. I would encourage all of you, if you haven't, to take the comparative agility PI, the agile coaching PI, to at least, it's free. So I don't know, Amra, if you could put a link to it in the chat, but a link to the survey, but you should do that, and it'll give you a well-rounded sense of where you are from an experiential perspective. So it's not saying external coach or internal coach. I think it's looking at the competencies of coaching. Yes, maybe my stories and Mark's stories are from an external coaching point of view where we're engaging a client. But I think a lot of the approaches, a lot of the tactics are relevant for both. I think the key difference between being internal and external, and I want to hear Mark weigh in on this too, is sort of the power structure and the amount of pressure you can put on and the stances you apply to your clients. So for example, if you're coaching leadership, I think it's easier for an outside coach consultant to coach up than it probably is for most internal employees to coach up to leadership team. Now, the tools and the techniques can be the same, but the amount of permission you get, the amount of gravitas, the amount of privilege you get given, I think external coaches probably have more privilege or more leeway to do that. So you have to be more cognizant of political dynamics, safety and things like that. That's something we touched on in the book. So I'd like everyone, and it's not about the book, it's about, I think, depending on your role, am I a consultant coach? Am I a contract coach? Or am I an internal coach? That situational awareness is probably critical to your success. You have to factor that into your context.
So I'll weigh in a little bit on that. I think it's been interesting over the pandemic. I've actually seen some amazing things happen with some internal agile coaching capability. I mean, the thing that I do really most of when I'm working with clients is growing internal agile coaching capability. I don't end as that external catalyst, I guess. I'm not in there forever, and therefore the most important thing I do is not telling people how to change. It's building internal capability so that change can happen continuously. And one client I was working in, we had a goal to build a world-class internal coaching capability. That was the kind of thing we were talking about. And when the pandemic hit, is like all that area of the business, they kind of thrive. They continue to thrive, even though the situation had completely changed to such an extent that these internal coaches got such a huge reputation that they were actually able to kind of start having an impact in other areas of the business. So I think agile coaching is going to be much more important internally going forward in the future than the external element of it, because agile's been around for so long now that people have been in the different environments, but organizations are still going to need support as they go through continuous change and experimentation. The internal agile coaches are the people who are going to kind of challenge the system, holding those mirrors up, and they're going to play such an important role. And actually it was I remember back in I was working with a group of agile coaches in 2016 in a community group, and we were talking about what we from a management and leadership perspective, what's one of the big changes that we're going to see. What do we do with all these managers in larger organizations, because we've got self-organizing teams. Of course, we see a big challenge where organizations leave them in place and you've got self-managing teams being managed. There's something a bit wrong with that, because ultimately it disempowers people. So effectively the big change is actually building these competencies and capabilities in people so that people's potential can really kind of flourish. So I think that's going to be a big change.
Cool. I'm looking at a question from Les Grove. It says, as a follow-up to Randy's question, are there parts of the growth wheel that apply more or less to internal versus consulting coaches? I'm going to take a pivot back, and I sort of want to, I think we've taken a left turn, but I don't want us to. It's really relevant to think of what is my position as a coach? Am I an outsider or an insider? I think that's relevant for your context setting. Like if I was planning my coaching plan, I would consider that context. I would also consider my skills. Am I good at facilitation or am I not good at facilitation? Like Mark and I've talked about, Mark is the consummate facilitator. He's got probably greater skills in that space than I do. So strengths and weaknesses, when you're thinking about coaching your clients, when you're planning, who's the right, am I the right coach for this client? How am I going to approach what are their needs? What are their coaching needs? What is the agenda? And how do I meet their agenda? I do think it's one of the factors that you think about, but I don't want you to trigger on it because I think I think if you look at the world that this is easier for outsiders to do and this is easier for insiders to do, I think you're looking at the wheel in the wrong way. I think bring it into context, but accentuate it. So what are things that apply more or less? I think the whole wheel applies to internal and external. Now, I think there are things, for example, there's a leadership stance in the wheel, and is the coach as leader. So think of it that way: the coach not as coaching leaders, the coach as a role model, the coach as a leader. Now, I think if I'm an internal coach versus an external coach, as an external coach, as a leader is going to be perhaps as a change agent, as a visionator, as a disruptor. Maybe that's so the way I apply that stance might be different. If I'm inside, I might be working with leadership team. I might be role modeling to a leadership team where the outside coach couldn't. So the leadership stance is applicable to both. How you dance in that stance is going to be situationally different. But I think any coach should be cognizant of, I have leadership responsibilities. There are times when the people I'm coaching need me to show up as a leader. And if I don't have skills in that area, I need to start working on competencies in that area. Mark, any reactions to what I said?
Yeah, I think one thing I want to illustrate is not every Agile coach, in fact, no Agile coach is going to be like world-class in every area. There's going to areas where you're stronger and other people are stronger in other areas, and that's fine. And actually, there were some earlier questions about, where do I grow and, where do I focus on my own personal growth? For me, that's always been guided about where am my team now? Where is my organization now? If I grow my leadership competency, is that the thing that's going to really help my current context? So I'm often guided as much as anything about your context and what's going to help the current situation. I think another segment that might people have said to me before, Mark, that seems a little bit only relevant to external people, is maybe the advisory section, because there's some kind of consulting elements in there. Being able to give advice to people, this whole idea of setting up the engagement almost for success. But my response there is all about, well, what would change if you thought of yourself as a consultant? As an internal person, what would change if you thought of yourself as a consultant? And maybe that's something to take away and kind of think about, because I think a lot of that stuff can be absolutely relevant to an internal coach as well.
Absolutely. I think Mark really hit on a key point. It's like, we didn't talk about self-mastery as the center of the wheel, which is self-awareness, competency, growth, learning, continuous improvement. There's an intentionality. That's the center of everything. That we're the center as the coach, and being aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are. So it's not just taking the survey. The PI is a great place to start, but also looking at that and saying, what do I enjoy? What do I have joy? Like, one of the reasons I'm not strengthening my facilitation stance is, one, because I have people around me who are good facilitators, and two, I don't really enjoy it that much. It doesn't give me as much joy. I love leading. I love coaching leaders. I love shaking them up. I love seeing their little heads explode every once in a while, or whatever that means. It just gives me and them joy. Or maybe not them so much, but it gives us joy and it grows. So find the place where you have joy, where you have some skills. Be well-rounded, but realize there's going to be areas that I think of them as effectively starving areas of intentionally starving areas of the world, or not growing those areas, and that's okay. Figure that out. And even understanding the context where you may excel in a leadership coaching context. So that's a place where you're growing some skills or you get some joy in that. And I don't do technical coaching, for example, because that's not an area that I'm complete in. So really understanding where you fit and where you're growing. Let me go to Mark. Mark, could you tee up a question that resonates with you? Would you mind? Is there something in there?
Yeah, I just want to go back because I think one that we didn't touch on right from the start was Laura's question around after having made the training. I guess that's some kind of agile coaching training. How would you recommend to best start as an agile coach? Just by doing or jumping into the cold water?
Oh, I saw that and I missed it. Thanks for going back there. Go ahead, take it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think there is an element to you just got to start. You've got to do it to actually, and it's the same with coaching. It's the same with facilitation. You're only going to really start learning as you do it. But I think there are some things that can kind of aid your learning. Some things that are continually to aid my learning as I practice agile coaching. I already mentioned mentorship, but one important aspect as well for me has been supervision. So I have a supervisor. I know that sounds rather formal, but coaching supervision is a kind of understood and known thing, whereby when I'm coaching either individuals, teams, leaders, whatever it happens to be, I would have regular sessions with a mentor or supervisor, call them what you want, where I talk about what I've been doing, how I've been acting as a coach, and I get to reflect on that as well. And I'm doing that one for my own benefit and learning and growth. But also, secondly, so that I can be a better coach for the client as well. That active supervision has made me be hopefully much more valuable to my client and really honed my own learning process as well. So that's probably one of the main things.
I mean, I would echo what Mark said, Laura. It's get a mentor, and mentors can be, you can find. I remember years ago, there's a lady, Joanna Rothman, who's a consultant not in the pre-agile space, in the post-agile space, and she was a mentor to me, and she never knew it. So I was modeling her. Sometimes I mismodeled her, like her speaking style, and so I made some mistakes. But Joanna was just someone that I looked up to, and it was surprising how much I could learn by reading her materials and by watching, sort of watching her on stage and things like that. So you can find those remote role models and mentors. You can find personal role models and mentors. Develop that. You can find them in a group. For example, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we have once a month, one of our Agile groups has a coaching circle, like a coaching breakfast, which is just wonderful. I mean, I'm a pretty seasoned coach, and I love attending it. I love sharing, but I also love learning. I take something away from every darn breakfast that we have. I steal something, like something to write about or an idea. It's a wonderfully rich landscape. So I think be active, but then I want to flip it around and say coaching is not an academic exercise. Coaching, you have to practice. That's why I love the throw people in the water. Maybe that's a good metaphor, as long as they don't drown, but throw people in the water. And because in order to become a great coach, you have to practice. That's where Mark and his supervision, in my experience, I've taken professional coaching classes, and one of the things there is probably 50% of the time we were actually doing scenarios and practicing our coaching. That sharpened my skills, and every time I coach, the Scrum Alliance is coming up. The Scrum Alliance gathering is coming up, and we're going to have a coach clinic there. And that's a place where you can attend as a coach, you can volunteer as a coach, or you can come as a coachee and get coached, and you can learn from the person coaching you. You can even play with them and say, can I coach you on something? And so practice. I think find opportunities to practice wherever you can and really hone your skills. And don't be artificial. Oh, I think I'm going to be a master coach in 6 months. It takes, so be realistic. Realize that it's like a carpenter. How long does it take to become a master carpenter? A lifetime. I think coaching is very much like that.
And actually, to the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel, we haven't fully published the new guidance yet, but it'll work the same as the old version, and there'll be kind of almost 5 levels within it. You know, I wouldn't call myself the 5th level on any of them. And I see that as a real positive thing, because there's always things to learn. There's always something more to grow. And I think that's a very important mindset aspect for Agile Coach as well. Matthew's got a question here around the applicability of the wheel for Scrum Masters and team coaches. I'll start on that one if that's okay. I think it's absolutely applicable for Scrum Masters and team coaches. Actually, I see the profession of Agile coaching as something that underpins Scrum Masters and team coaches. Yeah, and actually, it is almost can be damaging in some contexts and some organizations that we sometimes differentiate between these different roles. We call some people Scrum Masters and we call some people Agile coaches, because by doing that, we're potentially disempowering Scrum Masters, which we've been doing for years and years. You know, the Scrum Master is a fairly hefty role in terms of being able to influence people. What we want to certainly avoid is kind of avoid some kind of hierarchy of coaching or something like that within organizations. That can be very, very damaging. So I see it as a profession that underpins, whether you call yourself a Scrum Master, a team coach, an Agile coach, call yourself whatever helps you make an impact in your organization. But absolutely, it underpins that.
I had someone ask me, Vanguard is a financial tech company here in the US, and they approached me to do a talk for like their community of practice. And they sent me, and they're like, you know, can you talk about coaching? Please don't just talk about Agile coaching. Can you reframe coaching to be coaching for managers and leaders, if that makes sense, right? So another way of saying it is, could a manager pick up your book and get value from it? Because it doesn't look like they can. And I hit myself in the forehead, and I'm like, crap, that's not what I wanted. I really think coaching is a skill so we have this discussion of Scrum Masters. Are they coaches? Yes. Team leads? Yes. Coaches, junior coaches? Yes. Leaders? Yes. I wish I would have maybe reframed the book in some way. I don't know, to make it appeal to everyone, because I think coaching skills is something particularly leaders in organizations could really benefit from. And it's not just the leader, but their teams could benefit. So I'm not talking about the leader is being more effective as an organizational leader. I think the coaching skills can be phenomenal, and being able to be multifaceted or well-rounded. So another way of saying that is, I wish everyone in the universe would take the Agile Coaching PI. So not just as an Agile coach or a Scrum Master, I wish team members would take it. I wish everyone would take it. I think it could give you insights to make you a better person in whatever role you are. So that's like a commercial, but it's a heartfelt commercial, because coaching is really it's growing those around you. It's creating it's growing organizational capability. It's growth oriented to me, and how do we help to grow? I want to see, Irma had a question. What starts a coaching relationship with someone? What are some prerequisites to keep in mind and how do we know whether someone is ready to be that type of relationship? I think one of the first things, Irma, would be to be invited in. So I think, remember when we talk about internal coaching versus external coaching, one of the challenges for internal coaches and external, but more for internal coaches, is you get told to coach someone. I don't know if anyone could raise their hand, but if anyone's been told, Jeff, Mala, Ingrid, you are a coach, and now you have to go coach those people. And someone points you at them and says, and go make them better. So the byline is, make them better, and it's your responsibility to improve them. So that's a push. I don't think that's a really effective strategy. So even if you're pushed towards someone, I would say you want to create the stance where you want them to pull you in. You want them to ask for coaching. You want them to see the need. So I think it's push versus pull, and try to influence pull. Invitation, try to be invited. Even if you're uninvited, try to turn it around and reframe it into an invitation. The second thing is what I learned. I went through an ORSC program, Organizational Relationship Systems Coaching. So it's a professional coaching program for systems, for groups. And they talk about establishing the coaching agreement very early on. And that's something I took into my Agile coaching. I think I was fairly lazy about, I would dive into clients without establishing the conditions of the coaching early on. Sometimes I would informally do it. Sometimes it would be contractually, it'd be written down, but I wouldn't establish it with each and every client. So in this case, each and every client could be an individual or a Scrum team or a small group or a leadership team or a leader, whatever. But for every one of those engagements, I think there's power and positivity in establishing the coaching agreement. What are we trying? So be pulled in, and then the first step is, how are we going to coach? And explaining the coaching relationship. Part of the coaching agreement is explaining what coaching is and what it isn't, what you're here to do and what you don't do. So really sort of setting the stage, I think is incredibly important. I would do that with everyone. So starting, I think there's an art to starting. There's some canvases in the book that try to help with, effectively establishing that baseline. And it's worth the time. So the first coaching hour, when I do coaching now, I do some virtual coaching, and sometimes folks are taken aback. They're like, well, this is the first hour. We should be problem solving. I'm like, no, we're going to establish our agreement first, and then we'll move from there. What is our agreement? What are your goals and objectives? Here's what coaching looks like. Here's where I can help. Here's my style. I'll even explain my style, which is sort of different from other folks' style. And that can be very helpful. Mark?
Yeah, something else to think about as well. We're talking about coaching there as well, but actually, if we put it in the context of Agile coaching, often I wouldn't start with a coaching stance in most situations, in most organizations. I'm probably going to be going, so yes, invited in, but actually there's some of the other stances which allow you to build trust and the relationship much faster. So you're going facilitation, teaching, mentoring, maybe kind of giving them something that they can kind of get value from really, really quickly. So if I think about actually going to work in a new organization, setting up a new pilot team or something like that, you're probably going to start with some relationship building, some teaching, and some mentoring, and you'll work a lot through the internal coaches, the internal potential new Scrum Masters. But after a while, what you'll start to do is you'll find that at some point in the relationships, that's when you might want to almost recontract with them and say, look, you got some of this now. You kind of got the basics. I think you're now ready to take more of a kind of coaching stance. I'm better if I take a coaching stance at this point. So it will also probably change over time as well, in terms of that contracting that you do with people as in an Agile coaching world.
I want to just amplify what I think, Mark. I was looking at so I was multitasking. I apologize, everyone. But relationship, I just wrote a blog post a while. I think establishing relationship first, not forget coaching, establishing. So I want all of you to sort of think about, I think about radical candor a lot, and what Kim Scott talks about in radical candor, providing it is caring personally. Is one of the dimensions of that. And to me, that's, in other words, establishing a relationship before we do anything and really connecting at a human level with someone. So whatever you can do, sometimes we're too grandiose in our stances. Oh, I did this stance and I did that stance. What are you doing to establish a relationship and rapport? And making sure that there is a relationship. I'm the right coach. Sometimes early on, one of the best decisions you can make is, like, if I could see some clients, I'd be like, you do not want me, you want Mark Summers. I am not the right coach for you for this agenda. And I do referrals quite a bit. And it's not just skill set referrals, it's even style referrals or experiential or context-based referrals and things like that. If we look at it as serving the client, then finding the right person and trying to establish that early.
Also, from the external coach perspective, as a consultancy, when we're supplying Agile coaching services, we often also do chemistry tests. So not every coach is going to be the right. So we might have, well, these are the coaches that could come and work with you. Who's going to be right for you? So even before we get to the kind of relationship building, we recognize that some people, not everybody is going to be right.
Shani, I wanted to touch on yours. You said, what are some good coaching certifications and focus areas for each of them? I'm going to sort of try to just defer that to maybe go get a mentor or talk in your local groups. The Scrum Alliance is one, IC Agile is another. There's the ICF Professional sponsored professional coaching certifications. I'm not going to judge which ones are good or bad or recommend them. I think, and it's hard to do in this format, what I would suggest is go talk to your mentor and have that really connected to your goals, really connected to your joy, really connected with your journey, connected with your skills. Do the assessment, and then have that deeper conversation and look at what certifications might map to you and what might be meaningful to you personally, and then in your career journey. I do that quite often. Let's see. So Danica said something about CAL classes. I think I do CAL classes. I got a huge value. However, it doesn't have currency in the market. What happened there? I mean, I think, Danica, it's not even about Sahota. It's the leadership classes. I think leaders are still a work in progress. So in the universe, leaders are probably the best way I think of it is it's still a challenge and they're a work in progress. Now it's getting better. 10 years ago, it was like pulling teeth to get more than 32 minutes with a leader to do training or to do coaching of any, they wanted you to be coaching teams and changing the system without their involvement, their direct involvement. And I think that has shifted strongly. But there's still, leaders are a work in progress in agile transformations, et cetera. The CAL targets them. There's other leadership classes that target them. I think as change agents and coaches, we can suggest those things for the leaders. The other thing, I attended Michael's class. Some of the classes have different alignment with different classes of leaders. So I attended Sahota's class, and I'm not going to judge it, but I could see a collection of leaders and organizations that would not do well with Michael's class. They might do better with one from me or Pete Behrens or something like that. So I think leaders need it, but selecting the right class and the right instructor that resonates with the leadership team that you're trying to influence is critical. So it's not one size fits all. Just because everyone has common learning objectives, I think the style and the experience of the leader instructor really makes a difference in how it connects. Mark, do you want to take something?
Yeah, so I'm going down to see which ones are questions. Hopefully we don't miss too much. If we've gone down too far, maybe pop your question in again. I'm going down as far as Kevin Rush's question. So my company has recently made the decision to evolve from SAFe and are helping to develop coaches and train RTEs. I guess that's the release train engineers to become agile coaches moving forward. This has been confusing for some to communicate the difference between RTE, release training, and agile coach, as we're already evolving away from prescribed SAFe. So the question is, how would you help differentiate the roles? You got any thoughts on that one, Bob?
I thought you were going to take it. You have to take it.
Do I?
You start, and I'll fill in.
Yeah, I'd almost say I feel a little bit incompetent answering this question, in the fact that I've never worked in a SAFe environment, so I'm not even an expert about what a release train engineer is. I think so.
Okay,
I really couldn't take that question.
I've caught up. I've caught up a little bit. I mean, I have worked in SAFe, so I have to be honest with everyone. I am not. If you know anything about me or follow me, I am not a SAFe proponent. I was an SPC years ago, and so I don't like like understanding things. So I went to a class with Dean and I understood it very well, but I'm a little biased against SAFe. So with that being said, I do think the SPC role is, or I mean the RTE role is not. The RTEs I've seen in action are more project manager RTEs or more flow execution based. I'm not saying they don't do a little coaching. They could do so much more coaching. In fact, I've coached RTEs to coach more. So to lessen their predictability driving, their DNA to get things out the door, and to activate their people coaching and people growth DNA more. But they really struggle with that. I think. So it's to me now, I'm not saying SAFe or Dean Leffingwell, says that thou shalt be an RTE as a project manager. It is up to everyone, organizations, their interpretation of the role. But most RTs I see they almost look like project managers to me, or meta project managers, or large scale program managers and things like that. So I think they could use coaching skills, but I think they could use a mindset shift. I think there almost needs to be a mindset shift where they're not focused on execution. I would love this actually, where they switch from my focus is execution and delivery. And we all know that that's the point of Agile. So I'm not anti-delivery and value, but how do I get there? I get there by growing the team. Everyone, right? I get there by growing and activating the team. And that to me would be a coaching mindset. So I almost think there's a conflict of interest there to some degree. And I don't know if they really can become coaches. That's why what I also see is not a lot, but in SAFe environments, coaching is sort of an outside skill that comes in orthogonally to it. But again, I don't know how effective that is. And remember, I said I was biased. Go ahead, Mark. Did you have any reaction?
I'm just going to generalize it a little bit more. Obviously, the situation that was described is a move away from SAFe. So my natural reaction in a situation like this, whatever the roles are or the things, is there's some kind of tension there within the organization as you go through this change. So the approach to that for me would be kind of get people together who are also sensing this tension, maybe people who are doing those roles, people who are interested in kind of working through that, and then design some experiments around it and use that tension to kind of navigate the actual change. So it's a tension. What experiment do you want to do that's kind of lessen that tension or kind of help the change move forward? Where are we going next, Bob?
Let's see. I was going down to. I'm going to go down to Wayne. Wayne said something, and you can look back, and I'm skipping over something. It's the last question I have. Agree with Cal 1-2. What difference do you see in coaching leaders versus others? I think the one immediate sort of tactical reaction, Wayne, and I'll couch it with a joke almost. One of the things I've seen is some coaches try to coach leaders and they're in the professional stance and they are asking powerful questions, and there's nothing wrong with powerful questions, everyone. You can see this notion that's aligned with the professional coaching stance, but sometimes I call it death by 1,000 questions. And I see this poor C-level person being coached, right? So they're being coached by a coach, and what are some of the and they're being asked questions, and the leader's head, I can measure their blood pressure, and it's increasing and increasing, and it looks like their head is going to explode. And it's like, if you ask me one more question, I'm going to escort you out and fire you, because this stance is not working for me. And the poor coach is like, I don't have any other stances. I have one tool in my toolbox. And to me, the leaders, I think leadership stance, role modeling works really well with leaders. Mentoring stance can work really well with leaders. Advisory, consultative stance is one of the things. They're really desperately looking for consulting advice. And a lot of coaches are incredibly uncomfortable with that. I think part of it is experiential. They may not have the experience. They may have academic coaching experience and not really have the stories to tell or the options to offer, but then they need to develop that. So I classically think leaders, there's probably, when you're coaching up, you probably want to select from a different set of stances. And I just mentioned a few that I've found can be adept. Now, that doesn't mean you don't do professional coaching stances. For example, if I'm in the first coaching session with a leader, I probably do want to ask some powerful questions, or that typical question of what keeps you up at night, what challenges are you encountering, and then really listen deeply. But then as we progress into the coaching relationship, I probably want to be adopting some of those stances that we talked about.
Yeah. Another big failure pattern that I see as well is kind of agile coaches maybe getting really frustrated and saying things like, why don't they just get it? The problem is they do get it. You know, they're not stupid people, and I think treating them as stupid people, you know, treat them as people like you would anyone else. Pick the most appropriate stance in the situation. I guess another big constraint sometimes would be maybe the time they're able to give you, the time available. So you might need to adjust based on to kind of maximize the impact on that. So think about how you might do that. You know, is there some information you can give them before the session, because they will take it, many of them will take it away and consume that before you actually then have that conversation or whatever. I'm going back up a bit, Bob. So just to clarify something, Karen raised a question very earlier on, which was why couldn't an outside coach model leadership? And I think they can, obviously. So if we're giving you that impression, that's not what we wanted to give you. And as an external coach, you are a role model. You all of that, the kind of leadership stance is appropriate as well. It's interesting, obviously, in the newer version of the Scrum Guide, they actually start to talk about leadership, the Scrum Master as a true leader. We are not now just a servant leader. We are a true leader. They don't really define it much more than saying this true leadership. For me, though, it is this section. And as an internal coach, as an external coach, you are a true leader. And for me, that means that role modeling that Bob's already talked about. There's that visionary element as well. You know, you've got to be. I've heard Bob talk about the cheerleader before as well, but it's somebody who can create a vision of the future. What the world could be, not like a product owner does around the what, but it's how we work as an organization. This is how we could kind of create that environment. And you are somebody who is nurturing and challenging and cheerleading people towards that kind of future state. And whether you're an internal coach or an external coach, that is absolutely something you do.
I mean, one skill for coaches, and I don't think it's directly called out by the wheel, the underlying is storytelling. I want all of you to just jot down right now that I want you to work on your storytelling skills. I want you to find stories in your organization because they're there, but you may not be paying attention to them. I want you to refine them, and I want you to tell stories in all directions. Stories of success, stories of failure, stories of Phoenix rising, stories of your personal stories where you learned, you made a mistake and you learned. Story to reframe the culture that way, and that can be incredibly effective. Visionary stories, possibility stories, borrow stories from me, from other people, steal stories if you have. But become the consummate, part of your change agency, and that goes into that role modeling. The second thing, I'm now just wrapping up, Mark. I'm going to wrap up a few quick points, and maybe you can as well. So think about that. Modeling. Another number one thing, something that really bugs me is coaches that tell me to do something and they're not willing to do it themselves. And I observe them. So you coach me and you share with me, Bob, you make a suggestion like whip limit. Bob, you have excessive whip. And then I look at the coach and I'm like, what are you talking about? You have 10 times the whip that I do. You have no self-control whatsoever. Or they say, Bob, you're not taking care of yourself. No self-care. Well, excuse me, neither are you. And not that that's the point, but when I say modeling, it's walking your talk. I can't tell you how powerful that is by you simply walking your talk. So I think of it as coaching without coaching. You're just modeling. And I want to make one final point on leaders. When you're coaching up, walk in their shoes. Walk in there. Too many folks coach leaders and you have no clue look at, and I mean literally, flip your brain around, work with them, look at the world through their eyes. Look at the challenges. Look at them getting reamed by the board. Look at them having whatever their situation is, the challenges they have, and get to know them personally. So really extend that empathy, that understanding, and then coach them with that. Meet them where they are personally and in their challenge space. Too many Agile coaches are not doing that. They're coaching them to be Agile, and they're really being indifferent. Don't be indifferent, and they'll respond to that. Mark, what do you got? Words of wisdom to live by.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I was going to dive into a specific area, but I think I'll kind of go bigger. So I remember actually back in 2008, I was at a Scrum gathering, and Mike Cohen made a comment such as, "Oh, well, if in 10 years' time, if we're still talking about this Agile stuff, we'll have failed." That was in 2008 when he said that. Obviously, what he meant is it should just become the way that we do things. Yeah. Obviously, we are still talking about this Agile thing, so I won't make quite the same mistake with Agile coaching, but it's the same sentiment for me. If we're still talking about Agile coaching in, I was going to say 15 years time, I'll give myself a bit more breathing space. In 15 years time, it should just become the essence of the kind of leadership that we have in organizations. Yeah. We need leaders, managers, whatever. This is the transition that we're helping people kind of make, building these facilitation skills, these storytelling skills, these kind of coaching skills as well. These are the kind of people that will be able to nurture and evolve continuously our organizations. So that's where I wanted to go, Bob.
Man, you just dropped the mic there, Mark. I love that. Everyone, I think, Amra, we're like 2 minutes to the top of the hour. I think it's time to close the Fireside Chat.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Mark, and thanks everyone who joined the conversation. If you want to be reminded by some of the answers from Bob and Mark, there will be a recording uploaded next week, and also join our Meetup group to be notified about our upcoming events. Thanks, everyone.